hour. On this day, day 3 of our week-long series, as President Obama says he is not giving up or giving in. But can he get people back to work? I'm Cheryl Casoni, and joining me for the hour, Rob Morgan, Chief Investment Strategist at Fulcrum Securities, and Dow Jones Global News Editor Mike Reed is with me as well. Hello to both of you. And in Casoni's Corner to debate whether the president's jobs programs are working, Erica Payne, founder of the Agenda Project, and Mark Matson, founder and CEO of Matson Money. Plus, we have Vestas North American President Martha Wiersch telling us how wind power is translating into job power. And President Obama just moments ago addressing the challenges facing his administration in cutting the unemployment rate. The president telling the AFL-CIO Executive Council meeting in Washington his administration is committed to creating jobs for all.
We're going to keep fighting for an economy that works for everybody, not just for a privileged few. We want an economy that rewards, once again, people who work hard and fulfill their responsibilities, not just people who game the system.
I sense I'm going to tax the rich thing in there somewhere. But anyway, joining me now is in Casoni's Corner today, Erica Payne, founder of the Agenda Project, and Mark Matson, founder and CEO of Matson Money. All right, Mark, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think the president needs to do right now to get people jobs in this country?
Well, first of all, politicians don't know how to create jobs. If they did, they'd be entrepreneurs. But if he wanted to create jobs, what he would do is he'd make this the beacon of entrepreneurial freedom and free markets that it used to be. And he would start very simply. Number one, he'd have an across-the-board tax cut, even more than the Bush has already. He would do away with capital gains, do away with dividends, and then he would help pass a balanced budget amendment so that we could get this country back under control and let entrepreneurs have a massive explosion in wealth. You know, Kennedy knew it, Reagan knew it, that if you want to raise revenue to the government, you actually reduce taxes. That really confuses liberals and progressives.
Erica?
Here we go again. I don't know who Mark's economics teacher is, but he obviously skipped a class or two. There are a couple of ways to create jobs. One is to increase demand, and the other is to directly employ people. So Obama's budget that he put forward gave tax cuts to 95% of Americans, 95% of Americans, and that helps stimulate demand. Another thing Obama has done is extend unemployment benefits to people who are looking for a job but can't find one. That helps put more money into the economy. And the third way is to directly employ people, which the Obama administration has also done and which I would like to see more of.
But actually, Erica, I have to ask you about that. I mean, we're waiting on the jobs report for Friday, and that jobs report forecasted to see unemployment go higher. In particular, you're going to see those government jobs, those census workers, going away.
Right.
And if you look at the amount of government jobs versus private sector jobs, there's been a major shift in the last year. I'm sure that you agree the American taxpayer does not want to foot the bill for this anymore.
No, I think it's 100% right that that we have seen a shift with the census workers leaving the government payroll. But what we do want to see is the government reach out and hire private firms to do things that we need done as a whole, which are build roads, build bridges, lay high-speed internet, those kinds of things. There's a great idea out there for an infrastructure bank that would both assist the private sector and put people directly back to work. I'd love to know what Mark thinks of that idea.
But you know what, Mark? I mean, here's the thing, though. The infrastructure projects in this country, the majority of them are through stimulus funding. We burned through half of that already.
Stimulus isn't working. I mean, the numbers are clear. We went from 8% unemployment to almost 10% unemployment. When Reagan's tax cuts went in, we went from 10% to 7%, and we put 16 million people to work.
Okay, so it's a totally different situation, Mark.
First of all, you know what? I know we're going to disagree on most things, but I think we can agree on being respectful and not interrupting each other, which make it a much better debate for the listeners. But to finish my point, what would work here is to get entrepreneurs going. When I started business 20 years ago, I started with 3 credit cards. I have 35 employees, 12,000 investors, and $2.6 billion. And it wasn't from government spending, it wasn't for waste, and it wasn't giving cocaine to monkeys. I mean, we have massive amounts of waste in the federal government, and this president and this Congress is doing nothing to make it any better. We have to stop wasting money, and we have to balance the budget. If you don't want to raise taxes on the marginal rates, then at least agree that we ought to have a balanced budget. Keynes said, even Keynes, your hero, said that deficit spending should be temporary, not not permanent. And what we have here are permanent deficits that destroy wealth. So go back to Keynes.
And so,
check your economics book, Erica.
So at what point should we spend money? Should we spend money when we have a major problem in front of us, which is a place where we are right now, and is the same place we were after the Great Depression? It was very clear what happened. Mark, we're going to be respectful. I think that you suggested that to me earlier, so I'm going to go on and stick with what you want since we're so often in agreement. After the Great Depression, we made a massive investment in infrastructure in this country, and you saw that we then had 50 years of an amazing prosperity. Reagan had a very different situation when he went into office than President Obama went when he came into office. And let's be clear, President Obama came into office with the worst economic situation we have been in since the Great Depression. And I'll tell you something, normally balancing a budget is a great idea. When you are in a situation like we are in right now, there is absolutely no alternative except for to invest in your future. And I'll tell you what, China seems to be on the boat since they are spending $600 billion to make themselves more competitive than we are. And I think you want to see us go back to the dark ages. And in order to pay for it, what you want to do is give Lloyd Blankfein another tax cut.
Let me open up the topic,
Mark.
folks. Hold on, Erica. Let me open up the topic to my guest here in the studio, and I'm going to bring in Rob Morgan into this because if you're going to create jobs in this country, we all know that the engine of job growth is the small business.
Absolutely.
The small business owner is concerned about their tax structure for next year. The small business owner doesn't have enough business to hire folks. In fact, we might see some more layoffs coming this Friday. So what do we need to do to get jobs going in the country?
I am philosophically on board with Mark. I think the across-the-board tax cuts are ultimately the way we need to go. That is not the debate today, though, and an idea that has been floated, and perhaps it even came through in a watered-down way in a recent bill, tax credits to small businesses for hiring. That's a smaller version of what Mark is talking about. The administration and Congress were debating this. The last I heard about it, it was stuck in some committee.
The Obama administration actually put a $5,000 tax credit in for small businesses for their new hires. They also had a $1,000 tax credit for small businesses a retention tax credit. And on our last show that we had, well, I agree it could be more. On our last show, though, Mark seemed to disagree with that and thought it was more important to give tax cuts to people like Lloyd Blankfein, who made $42 million in bonuses the year before he helped bring down the economy.
Erica, we had this argument last week, and I have to go back to what I said to you last week and to Mark as well, is that we were talking about the extension of the Bush tax cuts or getting rid of the Bush tax cuts, in particular how it affected small businesses, those that will be the engine of hiring in this country. And Mark's point to that, Erica, was that if you're going to tell them that you're going to up their taxes next year, which is what's on the table at this point, if you let those tax cuts expire, you will not see hiring. You will see laying off in the small business sector completely.
There is not a single person in this administration or in the Democratic House and Senate who is talking about raising taxes on small businesses.
But the
only thing on the table that is actually up for discussion is whether or not we are going to let the tax cuts expire for people who make $250,000 a year or more.
You're missing my point. But you're missing my point is that most small businesses file as LLCs. We talked about this last week, and Mark and I were both talking to you about the fact that those are the tax codes that's the attention that they need to put on this. You can give that $5,000 tax credit, great, but if you're going to tell a small business your tax rate's going to go from 30% to 39% next year, they're not going to hire. That's
Cheryl,
the point.
No one is going to raise taxes on small businesses. You all are talking about a whole swath of tax cuts that quote unquote expire at the end of this year, but 99% of those tax cuts are going to be extended. The only real debate right now is whether or not to end the tax cuts on people who make over $250,000 a year.
Let me bring in Mark into this, Mark, because my point that I'm trying to make here with Erica is that they file as LLCs. Any business worth $250 or more that files under the personal income tax form is going to see their taxes go up because they're the rich in this country. That's my point.
This debate is about, thank you, Cheryl, debate is about getting people back to work and the best way to do it.
Right.
You know, the bottom line is that deficit spending by the federal government destroys capital and destroys wealth. It doesn't matter if an individual does it or a corporation or a government. to the extent that you spend more than you create in wealth, you destroy the economy.
But honey,
and if
that
we're
just
wanting
right
to
there
raise,
is not
excuse
accurate,
me,
Mark.
whoa, excuse me.
It's just not
to
right.
The extent,
I did deficit spending in my personal budget
There
when
you go
I
again.
paid money to go to business school. I spent $100,000 of deficit spending of my personal budget to get an MBA
Okay.
from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. That is deficit spending. That was a net positive over the length of time of my employment.
I don't have much time with all of you, but let me just real quick, in one line, in one sentence, Erica, if you had a moment with the president, what would you tell him to do to create jobs in this country?
I would tell him to never listen to anything that Mark has to say.
Mark?
I would tell him to stop putting his foot on the boot of big businesses and let this country return to free markets.
Lloyd
and capitalism.
Blankfein suffering tragically, Mark. Tragically.
All right, Rob
Infrastructure
Morgan.
bank.
Guys, hold on. Rob Morgan.
I would say, hey, small business tax credits
All right.
as a minimum.
There you go. Mike Reed from Dow Jones.
Tax cuts are great, but this country can't afford them.
All right,
Not
well-
unless they cut entitlement spending. Do the same together, you could do it.
Interestingly said.
Balance
All
the
right.
budget, guys.
Mark
Balance
Manson,
the budget.
Mark Manson, Erica Payne. It is fun as always. I will see
Thank
you
you,
next week
Cheryl.
for Cassoni's Corner. Thanks to both of you. All right, the markets are trying to read between the lines ahead of Friday's all-important jobs report. We're going to see what is written on the wall, or at least up on the big board. That's next on Fox Business. Dow up 37.